Hi, I'm Willow Whimsy. I report for the Lilliputian Times, and I wanted to share a little more about an article I first wrote back in May 2024. It was a piece about an eco-city called Terraflora, and about how one giant's mistakes turned a hopeful experiment in cooperation into something much closer to a diplomatic crisis. At the time, Terraflora was being hailed as a bold new partnership between giants and EcoTopians. On paper, it was all about shared progress and harmony. But as I followed the story on the ground, what I found was a trail of collapses, lawsuits, and some very nervous neighbors. The giant at the center of it all was Kimberly Burton, known throughout our communities as Big Eye. And the more I listened to the EcoTopians who had lived through Terraflora, the clearer it became that this was not just a construction story. It was a warning about what happens when delicate worlds are placed in the wrong hands. Terraflora itself was meant to be an eco-city built under a grand banner with an even grander name, the Global Orchestrated Development, Humans, Environment, Lands, Planets Unifying Symbiosis. The acronym was GODHELPUS, which in hindsight was probably more honest than anyone intended. The idea was simple. Giants and ecotopians would work side by side to create a city that balanced human settlement, environmental care, and long-term planetary health, a flagship for interspecies cooperation. When I began reporting, the first voices I heard were already skeptical. Dr. Gaia Greenleaf, chair of the Global Regeneration Council, told me she was not sure who put these fools in charge of Mother Earth, but she was very sure they needed their heads examined. It was not the kind of quote you normally get at a ribbon-cutting ceremony. EcoTopians had agreed to help create the first city not completely removed from what they laughingly called giant civilization. They had been promised a pristine, untouched location. What they arrived to find was that work had already begun in the backyard of the giant's former wife. It was, by all accounts, a pleasant garden near the ocean. Nice, but not quite the carefully selected site they had been expecting. The compromise was accepted at the time, perhaps because everyone wanted the experiment to work. But even those early details were quietly added to a growing list of concerns. Of course, one engineer said to me, that's going straight into the lawsuit. Then came the night when the reticulation system failed. At around 1 o'clock in the morning, a major blowout in the giant's underground pipes opened a sinkhole beneath Terraflora. In the collapse that followed, the Green and Harmony residential towers went down, and several roads and community buildings were severely damaged. Project lead Leafy Sproutwell told me, "It's basically the whole Harmony precinct, and we were lucky it wasn't tragic." When he and the EcoTopian teams arrived on site, the scenes, he said, were horrific. Foundations had shifted, structures had folded into themselves, and the entire promise of Terraflora seemed to have disappeared into the hole. There was one strangely comforting detail. The giant's painters, known as the Daub Squad, were so far behind schedule that it would have been the residents' grandkids moving in before they ever finished. Had the city been occupied at the time, the story I was writing would have been about lives lost, not just buildings. By the time I spoke again with Sproutwell, his patience with giant tradespeople had evaporated. "Never again," he told me, "will we have another giant tradesperson on site. The way they wear their pants, crack of dawn, took on a whole new meaning, and it's way too much when you're 10 centimeters tall." It was a joke, but behind it was something very real. The sense that working alongside giants at ecotopian scale was not merely inconvenient, but actively hazardous. The smaller stories around the disaster only sharpened that feeling. The rescue team had initially feared that Captain Mavis and her security squad had been swept down Rock River. Later, it emerged that they had not been washed away at all. They had been sidetracked by the giant food delivery app, failed to make sense of it, and ended up dumpster diving at a fast food outlet instead. They returned covered in grease and wrappers, and Sproutwell, with a weary shrug, told me, "Why they were eating that rubbish, we have no idea, but as usual, the trail leads back to Kimberly Burton." In Terraflora, almost every odd detail seemed to lead back to Big Eye. As engineers picked through the wreckage, they realized that the reticulation failure was only part of the story. Early cracks in the buildings had never been random. They were the result of a decision that might have made sense in a permaculture workshop, but not under a city. Big Eye had built Terraflora's village on a hugel bed, a raised bed formed from layers of rotting wood and organic matter, wonderful for sequestering carbon and growing plants, less wonderful as the foundation for multi-story towers inhabited by tiny residents. Sproutwell explained it to me this way. Although it's a wonderful permaculture practice sequestering carbon, for us, it's like sleeping on top of a giant rotting bed of trees. Residents could have gone to sleep feeling like they're in heaven and woken up falling into the equivalent of hell. EcoTopian engineers had to be brought in to carry out extensive underpinning. They abseiled down into dark cavities beneath the buildings, securing foundations that should never have been left so unstable. As one pointed out, you can guess where that small matter has been added to, meaning the lawsuit. Behind the dry humor, there was a warning. Even well-intentioned eco-practices can become dangerous when scaled up and poorly understood. Things, as they say, went from bad to worse. The original gardening team, Green Thumbs, gave up and headed back to the wilderness. Daisy Digwell, the head gardener, told me, One job is all Kimberly had to do." That one job was simple: plant first, then pebbles. Instead, he organized a supposed surf trip for her team to some secret locations. They came back looking pudgy, their wetsuits mysteriously dry, and asking about the locations of certain dumpsters. It did not sound like a training exercise. In their absence, Big Eye had proudly taken charge of the gardens. When the team returned, he announced that he had finished the landscaping. Daisy and her crew checked his work and found the process reversed. Pebbles had gone down first, with plants wedged into place afterwards. It was, in effect, a garden built backwards. Sproutwell told me they had added a new name to the project: Green Dumb. Rectification works were carried out yet again, and yes, added to you know where. For the gardeners, this was the final straw. "We don't know what that bloke's IQ is," Daisy said, "but like the reticulation, there must have been some leakage through the years." Incoming residents saw what had nearly happened to them. Luna Leafglow, one of the new arrivals, told me she was prepared for the usual pioneer risks. Arrows up their behinds, as the old saying went, but not for thousands of pounds per square inch of freezing bore water exploding through her home. "They would have been picking me and Bruno out of that bay tree," she said. She also noticed that the black spot on that tree, which Big Eye had promised to deal with, was still untouched. It was a small detail compared to sinkholes and cracked towers, but for Luna it summed up the pattern: promises made, systems half understood, and problems left unaddressed. In the midst of the disaster, EcoTopians began to turn the sinkhole into something else. Through compensation terms, the original cave system that had been promised at the beginning, EcoGrotto, was finally constructed. The sinkhole became a series of waterfalls flowing into the caves below, transforming what had been a terrifying gap into a dramatic feature. EcoTopians had been reluctant to share some of their more advanced living system technologies with giants. Now, with the cave system in place and the build team working in a more secure location, they felt safer bringing in their free energy systems, water creation technologies, and other regenerative systems they took for granted in their own lives. Their caution was grounded in history. Time and again, they had seen giants run off with plans, sell them to elites, lock them in safes, and never build anything meaningful. The treatment of Nikola Tesla, whom EcoTopians called the Great Connector, had set interspecies relationships back a century. Instead of guiding giants into self-sustaining harmony with Mother Earth, he died poor and broken. As one elder explained to me, "We've shared our secrets, and they've shared our work with their elites. We're done repeating that mistake." By the time EcoGrotto was operational, the EcoTopian team were busy in their secure cave system, but one symbol of risk remained: Big Eye's boots. Whenever the giant was seen approaching in his size 9 footwear, emergency alarms sounded and hard hats went on. There had already been near misses. Captain Mavis had one incident she would never forget: a boot logo literally indented into her head. No fatalities so far, Sproutwell told me, but a number of near misses. Mavis did manage to secure a sponsorship deal from Giant Boot Co., receiving 10,000 eco credits, which was seen as one small good outcome carved out of the chaos. Residents, meanwhile, began to appreciate the transformed landscape. The sinkhole, now turned into a series of waterfalls feeding into EcoGrotto, was widely admired. Some joked that they had finally got their pound of flesh out of Big Eye through upgrades and compensation. Others kept asking whether the new pond would hold water, given who had built it. The deeper engineers looked, the more worrying the picture became. Panic reached the highest levels when they realized that no complete drawings existed for much of what Big Eye had built over and around. No one knew what else lay beneath the surface, undocumented and potentially unstable. Underground specialists were brought in to map whatever they could. Sproutwell himself, under immense pressure, was last seen, as one witness put it, being rolled out on a stretcher in the fetal position, sucking his thumb, and talking about inventing time travel to go back and save the planet from one disastrous baby. It was a darkly comic image, but it captured the feeling. This had been more than a bad contract. It had felt like a timeline gone wrong. Meanwhile, attempts were made to serve Big Eye with what had become a monumental lawsuit. "All we heard," one EcoTopian joked, "was it took a dozen of us to carry the thing. It was so long." By the time the document was ready, the giant had gone. The last confirmed reports placed him heading north, talking vaguely about a garden he needs to build in Cambodia. Those of us following the story weren't quite sure whether to be relieved he had left Terraflora or frightened for wherever he was going next. Cambodia's ancient city of Angkor Wat had once been home to around 900,000 giants. In earlier times, EcoTopians and giants had freely exchanged ideas and knowledge there. For a while, the giants followed EcoTopian systems. But, as usual, they eventually made a mess of things. "We had so much hope for Cambodia," one elder told me, "but now we're warning our folks to head higher into the mountains of Kirirom, as Big Eye is on his way." That was how my first Terraflora article ended, with EcoTopians rebuilding a sinkhole into EcoGrotto, renegotiating how and when they shared their technologies, and issuing quiet warnings to other communities. Somewhere north of Terraflora, a giant with a record of eco-disasters was walking toward his next garden. And those of us watching the story unfold were left asking the same question the article began with. Can the giants be trusted?